So long, butterfly, adios, au revoir, goodbye.
Hello everybody, welcome to Monarch Madness Live. My name is Sean McCammon. Normally I work at the Laurel Creek Outdoor Center, but today we're coming to you from Spruce Haven Farm just outside of St. Agatha. Just a beautiful property owned by the Westfall family. And we're on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people, as well as the Neutral Nation. And today we're going to be tagging some monarch butterflies, which is very exciting. Just as you in September probably started an educational journey, it's going to have some challenges, some ups and downs. Monarch butterflies are going to be starting their own journey of 4,000 kilometers to Mexico very shortly here. And so this is very exciting for us to be out here doing this. We started our Monarch Madness projects back in June, and we asked students to report to us where they saw monarch butterflies and also milkweed plants that monarch butterflies depend on. And we're going to use that information to decide in the spring which schools should receive monarch way stations. And way stations are kind of like a milkweed garden that has milkweed plants in it, but also some other flowering plants that adult butterflies need to survive. So that'll be very exciting coming up in the spring. I know that my colleague Nathan Manty is in on the chat there, and he's going to be providing links for you throughout this broadcast so that you can follow things later or get extra information once this is done. My friend Al Woodhouse is set up in the field over here, and I'd like to introduce you to him. He knows a lot about butterflies, and he's going to give us a little bit of information before we get into the actual tagging process. So off we go here. Thank you to our cameraman David for helping us out today. We were a little bit worried that when we picked a day in late September for tagging monarch butterflies, we were a little bit worried that you might get cold temperatures or rain, but we had just an amazing day. Monarch butterflies can't fly unless they're 13 degrees Celsius, and we're going to be good today. Here's my friend Al. Al, hello.
Hey, Sean.
Nice day.
Oh.
Nice day to be out in the field.
I could not ask for a better day to be doing this, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I was just checking out the milkweed here, looking for any caterpillars that might remain. As most of you probably know, we've started a Monarch Madness project in the spring to help find out where the locations of milkweed are in our region and for monarch butterfly conservation. Here's the map that we've created from all of your observations, which is quite incredible. We know that there's more milkweed out there. We also know that there are some gaps in the milkweed that we don't have represented necessarily. But really incredible amount of work and amount of time has been invested by people in our school board in our region into going into this. And one of the things that we really wanted to do, because monarch butterflies are endangered, we wanted to have a citizen science, a region-wide project where people can help the conservation of monarchs, but also monarch habitat. This is a milkweed plant. This is monarch habitat. Without this plant, without milkweed, we will not have monarch butterflies. This is the only plant that the caterpillar of the monarch butterfly eats. Without it, no monarchs. So by mapping the milkweed locations in the future years, by adding to where milkweed is, this is going to greatly help in the conservation of that particular butterfly. There are about 10 species, 10 different types of milkweed that grow in Ontario. This one here is called common milkweed. Milkweed can be found in a lot of open areas, roadsides, fields like we're standing in today, even some wet areas. But one thing you might have seen if you've ever damaged a milkweed plant, I'll just take one of the leaves off here, and what you can maybe see coming out of the tip of that leaf is a little bit of white milky liquid. This is sometimes referred to as latex, and it is a really important part of the natural history or the life of monarchs. As the caterpillar eats the leaves of the milkweed, it takes in some of the toxins, some of the poisonous chemicals that are contained within the milk of the milkweed. And if you've ever wondered why the monarch might have that orange and black coloration, it's a warning coloration. It's actually advertising to lots of animals that might want to eat the butterfly that it's actually poisonous. It's toxic to eat. So the chemicals, the poisons, go from the milkweed plant into the monarch caterpillar, and then later in the life cycle, later to that adult monarch. So what we're hoping is to have more milkweed found within the region, in turn having more monarchs found within the region. So contributing scientifically as a region to the body of the population of the number of monarchs that actually, in a second, we'll discuss taking an amazing journey south.
Al, sorry to interrupt here. We asked students to send us questions beforehand if they had any, and we have some questions about the milkweed plants. And we've got a question here. If I plant a milkweed plant, will it grow back next year?
That's a good question, Sean. I've had some that do, and I've had some that don't. Most often you'll get them seeded. These are milkweed seed pods here, and if I open it up, there's lots of that milk coming out there, that latex. If I open up the seed pod, this one is not 100% ripe yet, but those are all the seeds that are lined up. When these are mature, when the seeds are ready to go, they each have a parachute attached to them. The milkweed pod opens up, and these will drift in the wind if they find a suitable spot, and land in a suitable spot, I should say. A new milkweed plant might grow there the following year.
How many seeds are in a milkweed pod?
I did, because I had some extra time one year. I actually took the time. I took 10 milkweed pods. I counted how many seeds were in each pod, and if memory serves me correctly, they average about 115 seeds per milkweed pod. You might be wondering about the overall life cycle of the monarch. I drew a quick life cycle here, and it depends on whether you start with the chicken or the egg. I started with the chicken, which is the adult monarch. It lays an egg on a milkweed plant, often on the underside of a leaf, but sometimes on the top of the leaf, sometimes on flower stems. But if you're looking ever for monarch eggs, it's best to look on the bottom of the leaf first. The egg stage lasts about 4 to 6 days. And this is a picture of an egg hanging on the underside of a milkweed leaf. And after that 4 to 6 days happens, you'll start to see some black specks within the egg, and eventually the young, the really tiny, only about 2 millimeters in length, that young monarch caterpillar starts to chew its way out of the eggshell and emerge into the world to its next stage in life. It stays in the caterpillar or the larva stage for 10 to 14 days. Usually in Ontario it's closer to the 14 days. And in that caterpillar stage it goes through 5 molts, meaning it sheds its outer covering, its skin, 5 times. After the 5 times is over, it then goes into what we call a pupa, or in the case of a butterfly, a chrysalis stage. And this chrysalis stage, it almost looks like a green grape. After the caterpillar is moved from the milkweed, which we call the host plant, because it's what the monarch larva feeds on, it will go from the milkweed, usually to a close by plant, and will then form a chrysalis by shedding that last outer skin. Underneath is this greeny-like material. It drops that outer skin and becomes that iconic chrysalis that we usually think of for the monarch butterfly with the gold dots. And as it nears that 14-day stage, it becomes clear, and you can actually see the adult monarch inside with black wings and a little bit of orange. From there, it heads out to be the adult, but after coming from the chrysalis, it takes about an hour to an hour and a half to fully expand its wings, because they're folded up in that chrysalis, but to fully expand the wings to the point where they're straight out, and to dry them enough where they can fly away. So about an hour and a half for that process. After that, it takes wing and it starts to look for sources of nectar to feed on.
Al, we've got a lot of questions rolling in here. How many eggs do monarch butterflies lay?
Adult monarchs, they can lay somewhere between 300 and 500 eggs.
Do they lay them all in one place, or do they...
Usually they don't lay them in one place. I think 3 springs ago, I saw a female in a brand new shoot of milkweed that was coming up brand new in the garden. I watched her lay 5 eggs in a cluster. In my experience, that's not the most common. In fact, that's sort of rare. Usually it's 1 egg here, one egg there, and they try to find different plants. What they're doing is they're using their antenna, they're smelling with their antenna and tasting with their feet. If they're going to be an egg-laying female, you might see them kind of landing on a leaf, deciding whether that's milkweed or not, landing on another leaf of another plant, and if they find milkweed, they'll often just wrap the back part or their abdomen around under the leaf and deposit an egg there. So it's usually not in clusters, it's usually individual eggs.
All right, we've got an online question from a grade 3 distance learner who wants to know what flowers do monarch butterflies like the best?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm assuming that question is what flowers do they like to feed on best? And it's any wildflower, any flower that is rich in nectar. And nectar is a combination of basically water and sugar, sugar being the source of energy for their flight and growing their bodies and keeping their energy up. There are flowers like, as you see behind me, there's goldenrod, which are the yellow flowers. There are some other ones that are called asters at this time of year, right off to my right. There are bergamots, there are cone flowers. So a lot of these wildflowers that you see in people's gardens can be good nectar sources for them. I know in my own personal garden we've chosen plants that do supply a good amount of nectar for the purpose of butterflies, not just the monarch, but others. So great question.
And a question that came up a couple of times was, do adult monarchs eat milkweed?
The adult monarchs do not eat the milkweed. It's actually the caterpillars that eat the milkweed. The monarch butterflies will feed on the nectar from the flowers, but they won't feed on the leaves or the stems of the milkweed.
All right, these are very good questions.
Yeah,
We've got
really well thought of.
We've got over 100. We're not going to be able to answer them all, but these are really good questions. All right, so we've got some live adult monarchs that we've caught. Maybe we can go down and start tagging some of those.
This is really exciting as far as I'm concerned. Like, this is why we've tuned in to watch the monarchs being tagged and to watch them at the very beginning of their long journey.
Yeah, and a beautiful day and a beautiful property.
Oh, we're very fortunate.
All right, come on down this way. All right. So we've got our tent set up here. We've already tagged 3 monarchs, and we've got 5 more in here that require tagging. I don't know if we're going to tag them all on camera here, but we'll give it a start. The organization that runs the tagging program is an organization called Monarch Watch, and we've ordered away from them to get some monarch tags. And some of the questions that came in were, what do the monarch tags look like? And they're quite small. Each one has an identification code on it, and we're going to stick one of these on a monarch butterfly, and if somebody in Mexico finds that butterfly with that tag on it, they will know where it came from, and it will help them figure out where butterflies are coming from to get to Mexico, and also how many are coming from each area. And so I was reading that about 17% of all the butterflies in Mexico come from Canada, so that's pretty good. And they've got it now so that about 100,000 monarch butterflies are tagged each year, and they're kind of lucky if they can find 1,000 in Mexico with a tag on them. And so about 1% of the butterflies that are tagged are actually found in Mexico. Some don't make it to Mexico. There's a lot of troubles along the way, and some of them are in Mexico, but they just never found them. So it's a neat citizen science project, and I'm going to give the paperwork here to Al to fill out. I need the stickers, and the Monarch people send along instructions, and one of the instructions that came said it's easier to get the stickers on a toothpick than to try and get that little sticker on your fingers and try to put it on the butterfly. So I'm going to grab one of the butterflies off the tent here, and I'm going to grab this one over here. See if it'll sit for me here. And this one is a male butterfly. Now I know there were a lot of questions saying, how do you tell male butterflies from female butterflies? And the males have 2 little scent glands on their wings, which are going to be really hard to see and the females have thicker lines on their body. So this is not easy to see, but we'll put that up there a little bit closer. So that one there is a male butterfly. And Al, the sticker that I'm going to put on this one has the code ABPU 554.
554.
All right. Now I've only ever tagged 3 butterflies so far in my life, and it went pretty well. Another question that came in from a student was, does tagging hurt the butterfly? In the old days of tagging butterflies, they asked you to scrape off the scales on the butterfly's wing in order to put the sticker on. The sticker was a little bit bigger, probably a little bit heavier too, and might have hurt the butterfly a little bit. But these days, you don't have to scrape off any of the scales on the butterfly's wing to do this. There is, if I can just show you here, these different sections in the butterfly wing are called cells, and this big one in the middle here is called the discal cell, and that's where the Monarch tag needs to go. And the Monarch tag is now on my finger. All right, so I'm just going to get that in the right spot on the wing there, and then the instructions say to press quite firmly, which, you know, when you're holding a delicate insect like this, you don't want to squish it, but they do say to press on the wings for about 10 seconds, and then it's ready to be released.
You can see the scent glands there.
All right, let's do another one. This one here. This one here is another male. This one here is another male. And Al, I'm going to put on a tag with the number ABPU.
ABPU
555.
555.
For those of you watching at home here or at school, if you write down that code, they post online all of the butterflies and all the codes that are found in Mexico. And so if you write down ABPU 555, you can look that up. They're not going to make it to Mexico for several more weeks here, but if it is found in Mexico, that code will show up. All right. So, toothpick here. Nine, 10. All right. So, maybe this one will sit here for a bit.
And there's another one right behind you, Sean.
Okay. Well, off it goes.
Right behind you, Sean.
Right behind me, yep.
Yep.
We'll get that one. Maybe this will be our last one. Okay.
Probably.
All right, we have another male. Somebody asked, how did we catch these butterflies? And we spent several hours on the weekend going around. I drove around. Some of my colleagues walked around. And I found one just on the side of the road in some goldenrod. I know we caught one here one day. Levi caught one here on the weekend. And it takes some time. If you know where to look. I mean, if you have some goldenrod blooming at this time of year, they're going to be feeding on goldenrod. So I was looking for the yellow patches alongside roads, driving around, and it's a good thing that we found some monarchs for our monarch tagging.
And we also had one donated to us that was raised. Shout out to those people for doing that for us.
Yeah, some people out there in the world are raising monarch butterflies, some for conservation, some for education in classrooms and just at home.
Yep, one of them was provided from a family.
Yeah, the Muntz family.
That's right.
The Muntz family gave us a monarch butterfly that they'd raised in their home. I think that's that one up there. So the code that I'm going to put on this butterfly is ABP.
ABP.
U.
U.
ABPU.
Yeah, ABPU.
556.
556.
Al, how many monarch butterflies are there in the world?
Well, they are declining, and the peak number since they began doing the count or the estimation was 320 million that would make it down to Mexico. I think the latest count is somewhere around just above 24 million or 26 million. Last year was a really good year for them. This year they encountered a lot of obstacles on the way back north that wiped out a whole bunch of them, so definitely in decline. There we go, out and flew.
All right. It feels like you're doing something good for the world when you take these butterflies. Like, for a long time, nobody knew where they were going, right? Like, even up to like in the 80s, nobody knew where monarch butterflies went. And we had a professor at like the U of T,
Yep.
I think.
Frederick Hart.
Yeah.
Yep.
1976. He started tagging butterflies because they didn't know where they went.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was discovered in 1976 when he was quite sick, and he still made the trip down to see it.
Amazing. So you can imagine that even up to 1976, all these butterflies that were around, all these monarchs, nobody knew where they went. And until they figured out the exact location, this is helpful for conservation as well, that if we know where they are over winter, we can do things that can protect them along the way. Now, it's an amazing migration. We've got a map over here. Do we want to take a look at this map and just...
Sure. I'll bring the camera over. So I'm going to try to get the map as close as I can. Right here is the dot for Toronto. Waterloo is not too far west of there, about here. And their overwintering grounds, where they spend the winter in the Sierra Madre mountain range, is right here. So they have to fly about that distance, which is about 4,500 kilometers. And it's truly an amazing thing. I know that my family, we just, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, we were down at Point Pelee National Park, which is the southernmost tip of mainland Ontario, in an attempt to watch the monarch migration. We've done this over the last few years. We didn't hit the right day. The weather was too good. They did not stop and form big groupings on the trees at the tip, but we were really fortunate to see some of the monarchs cruising from land over what is Lake Erie, and even with binoculars, even through binoculars, you're watching a butterfly that weighs 3/4 of a gram, that's about the weight of a paperclip, go over until, even with binoculars, you can't see it anymore. And at that point, you realize it's not even halfway across that lake right there, and still has to make the rest of the journey. So, to me, the most amazing aspect of the monarch's life is this migration. There are other monarch populations in the world. There are some on the Mediterranean. There are some in the grouping of islands near Indonesia. There are some in Australia, some in Central and South America. But the amazing thing is, the only population of monarchs that migrate at all are the monarchs in North America, and more specifically, the eastern North American population that we see. they make that 4,500 kilometer journey south to Mexico. And how do they do it? How do they go to a place that they've never been? The ones that do the migration south are actually the great-grandchildren of the ones that had, in the previous winter, spent the months down there. They have no connection with that particular monarch to ask for directions. There's no map for them to look at, but what is being found over the last 10 to 15 years is that monarchs are actually using, it's believed to be mostly the direction of the sun. So you might have noticed that as the summer goes on and the autumn begins, that the amount of sunlight we get, it gets darker earlier and the sun doesn't come up until later in the morning, so we're getting less sunlight. The sun isn't as high as in the sky, and that turns on some mechanisms in the monarch's body that says, it's time to start moving. So they're using their antenna as built-in GPS units, and they're using the angle of the sun that, as it changes throughout the day, their antenna and their brains are able to make those changes in travel so that they can actually head south. And one experiment that was done to allow us to understand a little bit more about how they migrate is they had taken monarchs and they had put black paint on the antenna of the monarch, which blocked the sunlight from getting in. The monarchs that had black paint got disoriented and they got confused and they got lost. The ones that they used to clear paint, so they're still covering the antenna, but the sun can go through the paint, they were able to migrate down south successfully. So we know it has a great deal to do with the antenna and the amount of light and the direction of the light they're picking up. But we also know that there goes a monarch right now. Sorry, the morning globe, sorry. We also know that there's some connection in the brain, that there's some computing that can do some, almost some problem solving. If we get off track, we can use our brain to navigate a little bit more too. So we know the antenna are of major importance to the migration. It's also thought that the Earth's magnetic field plays a role, that they can actually detect, like a compass, they can detect the magnetic field that surrounds the Earth. It's a remarkable thing that it all starts in Mexico, in the mountains of Mexico. It takes 2 generations to get up to Canada, the 3rd and 4th generation. So the great-grandkids and the great-great-grandkids make it up to Ontario throughout the summer, and it's those last generation, that 4th generation, the great-great-grandkids, that actually use their antenna and migrate south. 3/4 of a gram, and they fly 4,500 kilometers to a place that they have no contact with other than their great-great-grandparents have been there. And they're able to do this by incredible navigation systems that are built into their tiny little bodies. They do have a lot of troubles. We know that they have to go through a lot of places that have cities, even some major cities, and cities are not kind to a lot of living things, including the monarchs. We know that there are accidents with cars. We know that there are storms. In fact, this happened last year where it was a great year for monarchs. There were lots of monarchs, and then as they started heading south towards Mexico, storms that were coming up from the south wiped out a lot of monarchs, so fewer of them than expected made it down to Mexico. After they started leaving Mexico on their migration back up in March, there was another storm that wiped out another grouping of them. So, they have to contend with a lot of human-caused disturbance, and they have to contend with a lot of natural disturbance. These two things combined don't lend itself very well to the ease for monarchs making it down there. So such a tiny insect, 3/4 of a gram, they don't even know where they're supposed to go. They just make it there, and they have to contend with all these problems. As a result of all the problems, they are on the endangered species list, and they need our help in conservation. This project that we've been doing as part of the citizen science, using your help and the citizens of Waterloo region, this ongoing now project that we're going to launch every single year, hopefully we can make Waterloo region a very monarch safe region.
Al, we've got a lot of questions coming in about monarch migration. Someone wants to know, when will monarch butterflies come back?
Well, they leave the mountain range of Mexico in March, and usually the first one is seen near mid-May-ish. So sometimes you'll catch an early one that comes up first week of May, maybe even late April if they're that unlucky because the milkweed isn't quite up yet. But usually it's around mid-May that we start to get the big numbers of them coming, and throughout the season, as the generations go on, because they're laying eggs and we have more monarchs, you'll see an increase in the number of monarchs as the generations go on. So you should see your first ones around mid-May. You'll have to look, like keep your eyes open, because there aren't as many heading up north as there are heading down south.
All right. Claire from Riverside wants to know, why do monarchs go to Mexico and not somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a good question, Claire. Well, it's thought that a long time ago there was a big sheet of ice that covered North America. It was a glacier, and it's thought that it pushed everything far south as it came from the north and scraped all the land down towards Mexico. All those living things that relied on what the glacier was destroying had to move south with it. And as a result, they found the perfect spot that had the perfect conditions for them to spend the winter. The perfect wind, the perfect humidity, the perfect temperature conditions. Everything was just perfect in these 11 or 12 mountaintops within this one mountain range. It's the only place they go. And then the reason they think that the migration began to happen, that we have the only migratory population, is as the glacier melted, the butterflies, the monarchs, could go further north and further north and further north. But there was something ingrained in them that told them, as the weather turned cooler and as the flowers disappeared, they needed to return to those mountain ranges.
Envy from Sotheby Public School wants to know, how many monarchs fly from Canada to Mexico?
I don't know. I know that, as Sean said earlier, from the Great Lakes region, from Ontario and I think Manitoba, we have about 17% of all the monarchs that overwinter. They spend the winter in the mountains of Mexico. About 17% of them, or out of every 100, 17 of them would be from our area that we know. I don't know the exact number.
If there's 100 million in Mexico, I guess there'd be 17 million
17
from Canada.
million, that's right.
But lots of them didn't make it all the way.
Exactly.
And so, yeah,
So it'd be... That's hard math, but that's the theory behind it anyway.
Anyways, tens of millions.
Tens of millions
millions
for sure.
in Canada.
Tens of millions for sure.
Miss Challen from Riverside Public School wants to know, do all butterflies fly south?
No. The monarch is the only one that has the mass migration. There are other butterflies that have small migrations. A red admiral has a small migration, so a small movement north and south. Not for the same reasons, they just sometimes get blown up in the wind. There's a buckeye, common buckeye, which also can get blown up. It's more of a southern butterfly and sometimes makes it up to Ontario in the wind. It's not necessarily a true migration, but because it's going from one place to another, it could be considered a migration. There are lots of living things that have migration. Most people are familiar with the bird migration, where birds fly south for the winter and then that same bird flies north in the spring. This is similar in many ways, except for the fact that the same butterfly that flew south isn't the one that returns. And again, that makes it really unique. So green darners is a type of dragonfly. We know that they do migrate, they fly south, but it's not the same ones that return. So, in the insect world, there are other migratory insects, but the monarch, the flight of 4,500 kilometers, that's the remarkable one.
All right. Joe has been monitoring questions coming in through the internet. He's got a list of them. He's just going to blast a bunch at us here very quickly.
Well, thank you, Sean and Al, for sharing all this great information about monarchs today. So we have a question here. Does anything eat monarch caterpillars?
Sure. Well, no, I know there's a lot of wasps that like to lay eggs inside monarch caterpillars, and then the larvae of those wasps will be eating these caterpillars from the inside out.
Ants are notorious for eating the eggs of the monarch. So when the adult lays the egg on the leaf of the milkweed, ants will find it and consume it. A few different birds, most famously orioles and grosbeaks, will eat the adults. Even though they have that toxin in them, those groups of birds are actually immune to the toxin. But most other things, they can't eat the monarch.
Well, thank you for that. And Sean, I know you detailed this when you were sitting in the tent and you were tagging the monarchs, but could you just explain again, how do you tell a male and female monarch apart?
All right, so the female monarchs have wider stripes on the wings, and the males have scent glands. I think they're not really sure if they're used as scent glands, but a lot of butterflies have these black dots on them, these glands. They produce a pheromone. I think they're not quite sure that monarchs use those glands, but when I'm looking in the tent there, I'm basically looking for those 2 black dots on the wings, and whether the monarchs have thicker stripes or thinner stripes. Somebody asked, I don't know if Al knows this answer, but somebody asked, can you tell a male caterpillar from a female caterpillar?
That's a really, really good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if it is possible. Certainly I don't have an answer for it, but that's a great question. That's a really well thought out question.
Somebody Google that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the great thing is the outdoor ed team, we should mention that both Nathan Manty and Levi Moore, who are members of the outdoor ed team, are in the back office, so to speak, ensuring that everything is broadcast live to YouTube right now, and they are working on gathering all questions that we can't deliver an answer to. But here's one we have from Rylan at Silver Heights. How do monarchs deliver poison to a predator?
Okay, well, monarch butterflies are not venomous, so they cannot deliver the venom. They are poison. They have the poison inside of them, and so if something eats them, that thing gets the poison. And I think a lot of birds probably even instinctively know that that bright orange color means that if I eat that, I'm going to get sick, and so they don't eat it from the start. But they don't deliver the poison. They're just, if they're ingested by something else, that poison goes into that animal.
Thank you for that answer, Sean. We have a question here from the chat. Can monarchs freeze and then come back to life?
Well, they can't freeze and come back to life. Once they freeze, their cells are in a different form that they can't reshape. But we do know that their body temperature, or the temperature of their surroundings, can drop down to about minus 8 degrees. I think you were saying this morning, Sean, about 8 degrees Celsius, minus 8 degrees Celsius, and they can still survive simply because they do have a little bit of hairiness to their body. And just like humans, the reason our bodies shiver is to create muscle contractions, and that creates heat. Monarchs and other insects, they shiver too, to use their stored energy. When they have muscle contractions, they generate body heat also. So what they're doing is they're shivering to create heat, and then the little bits of hairs that are on their body are able to store a surrounding pocket of warm air around their body. So they can't freeze, but the environment around them can actually be below zero.
Good answer.
Great answer. Here's another question. Where is the best place to see monarch butterflies? And I want to thank Sophia from St. Andrews for asking this question.
Well, it depends on the time of year.
Sure.
So in the wintertime, you know, if you can head on down to the Sierra Madre Mountains down there, Mexico is a good spot. If you are looking around at this time of year, you know, when I was looking for monarch butterflies for us to tag, I was looking for the yellow of the goldenrod that would be in parks and along ditches, because the adults have to feed. They need some energy to be able to fly 4,000 kilometers to Mexico. And so these are the flowers that have nectar around here right now that I was looking at. So if you're going out for a walk after school or this weekend, look for the bright yellow of the goldenrod that's out here, and you'll find some purple asters and that other stuff. So I don't know, they follow migration routes, and so sometimes if you go down to like Point Pelee, I know Al, you went to Point Pelee.
Yep, 2 weekends ago.
2 weekends ago looking for monarch butterflies, and sometimes you go and there's a lot there, and sometimes you go and there's not many. So
and during the time where they're laying eggs and the monarchs are reproducing, you can find them around milkweed patches because the females will be drawn to that to lay eggs. The males will hang around milkweed patches in hopes that a female will come to the milkweed patch to lay an egg. But generally speaking, during the time where they're egg laying, around milkweed patches or even like gardens, or as Sean said, ditches or fields where there are plants that are providing nectar for them. So milkweed or nectar sources are your best bet during most of the warm periods of our year. And you know, Long Point, Rondo, Point Pelee, where these bits of land jut into the Great Lakes system, where it's a shorter journey across the lake for the monarch, is a great spot during migration.
We have three more. We have time for 3 more quick questions. Aylin McGregor, does the design on a monarch's wing help them?
well, certainly the color helps them. The color, that bright orange color, is a warning to other animals that I'm poisonous, don't eat me. You know, the design of all animals is generally helpful for survival in some way. Even if we don't know what that is, whether the black of it absorbs heat, the black stripes, whether the pattern helps break it up in the shadows of the trees that they're roosting in. So I'm sure the pattern helps it in some way. We don't often know why that is. Why different birds have different colors and different insects have different colors. But often it has to do with camouflage and heat.
And it was also thought a long time ago that the scales on the monarch's wings, or butterfly wings in general, were to prevent them from being caught in spider web, so it gives them a little bit of a surface, spider web sticks to it, and the butterfly gets away. It's now being studied that the scales, which are like overlapping shingles on a roof, help in the aerodynamics for flight. So yeah, definitely the design of the monarch and the coloration, it's to an advantage for them for survival.
The next question, I know both of you had an interesting answer for this to me earlier. Do monarchs make any sounds?
You want to go?
Well, they don't make any sounds. They don't vocalize any sounds like a bird would, or like a cricket. But if you are standing, and I've heard this about standing under the trees in Mexico, where you have millions of butterflies in the trees, that just their wings going back and forth sounds like a river or a breeze blowing. And so I know on the tent here, we can hear the flapping around from side to side, but that would be the only sound. I can't think of any other sounds that could be made by...
No, I've had them flying around my head before, and you can definitely hear the wing flap, but no other vocalization or squeaking or anything that comes from them.
I think our final question for today that we can take live is a really good one, because it really is the foundation of why the outdoor education team chose this project early in the spring. And if you could tell us, are monarch butterflies becoming extinct?
Well, a lot of what we know comes from tagging. We know how many butterflies make it from different areas of North America down to Mexico, and over the last several years their numbers have been dropping. We are worried about their long-term future. As just for this project, just researching a lot about butterflies, you find that there are so many people out there concerned about butterflies, about monarchs, doing really good things. They're planting milkweed, they're raising, they're tagging, and they're trying to prevent pesticide use from being used in their communities. And so there's so much good going on. The future of monarchs is in jeopardy. We're worried about them. I think they're going to be added to the endangered species list.
They are classified as endangered.
Classified as endangered already. And so, but there's just so much. Monarch butterflies have such a great story. They're a beautiful insect, and they've got this great story about their journey and their migration that a lot of people have kind of taken their story to heart and are helping them out. And so hopefully by doing things like this, you can be part of the crowd that's helping them out as well.
Okay, so I'm just gonna, hi everyone, Sean and Al are gonna move over to our clothing station, and just to give them a moment to set up, I do need to thank Sean McCammon, Al Woodhouse, Levi Moore, Nathan Manty, for all of their time and energy with the Outdoor Education Department in setting up the Monarch Madness project for all of you to be able to enjoy and to actually have a bird's eye glimpse into the live tagging of monarch butterflies. Without their expertise, their efforts, their creativity, projects like this from outdoor education with the Waterloo Region District School Board would never happen. And behind the camera today is also Dave Pope, who I thank for coming out and supporting us with tech. So come along to me, and we're going to connect back with Sean, because we had some big news to share regarding the Monarch Madness project.
All right, so in conclusion here, I wrote a song about monarch butterflies. Before we get into that, congratulations to North Lake Public School, who had the most submissions in our Monarch Madness projects. And we've got a video that we made at North Lake Woods Public School. That you'll be able to see a link to that in the chat, and we'll send that along to North Lake as well. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Hopefully we'll see you again for future live events down the road.
So long, butterfly, adios, au revoir, goodbye. Sun up in the autumn sky will guide you where to go. Hope your giving stays on track. Hope your grandkids make it back. Hope Big Dumber will come back. So long, butterfly, adios, au revoir, goodbye. The sun up in the autumn sky will guide you where to go. I am filled with awe and inspiration by your 4,000 kilometer migration. So long, butterfly, adios, au revoir, goodbye. The sun up in the autumn sky will guide you where to go. So we should thank the Westfall family for letting us be on their beautiful property here today. Thank you to David Pope for being our cameraman behind the scenes. Thank you to Joe Bell for overseeing our health and safety while we're out here in the field. Thank you to Jeff Brantz, a student at Eastwood Collegiate, who has provided us with a lot of butterfly expertise. Congratulations, Northlake, for having the most submissions in the event. And thank you for tuning in today, and we'll see you at our next event. So long, butterfly, adios, or